Hello and welcome to the Periscope from the Smithsonian Libraries. We are here in the what is it called again? The National Museum of Natural History, where we're installing our latest exhibit, Color in a New Light. And we have with us curator Jen Coleman Brockie, who's also reference librarian at the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum, and book conservator and head of preservation services, Vanessa Haight Smith. And as you can see, we are actively installing things. So if you hear a little bit of background noise, please bear with us, and let us know if you can't hear our speakers too. So behind the camera, hello, I'm Erin. I'm the outreach librarian for the libraries, and we are excited to give you this sneak peek. Please feel free to ask questions at any time, and if you have any other questions about the exhibit, you can look on our website at library.si.edu for more about the books, when the exhibit opens, and events that are associated with it. So I'm seeing lots of people join in. I'm so excited. Hi, guys. All right, so Jen, let's start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about the exhibit and what's so interesting and exciting about it?
So these two cases in the Natural History Museum are the libraries to display their collections, and we really wanted to focus on the diversity and strengths of all of our 21 branches. So we needed a topic that somehow connected all of these branches together, and the idea of color came to mind, and we found amazing gems in our collection. At Cooper Hewitt, I knew what we had. We had some fabulous things, but I was so excited to find what we had in our Dibner library and our Coleman Rare Books library. And we're going to talk about a few of those things that we're putting on display today.
This is very behind the scenes stuff. So pardon us.
So yeah, the color is a huge topic, so one of the big challenges was narrowing it down to 4 categories, and we start with the science of color, which we have some examples for you today, and in our larger case we have 3 categories: making, matching, and using color.
Great. And so Vanessa, can you tell us a little bit about these the books and what you have to do with the books in order to get them on display?
Well, once the books are selected by the curator, conservators, including myself, have to review them for their condition. Books are working objects. They have to open and close. The pages have to be turned. And so once they're reviewed, the few that do need repair, meaning that there might be some with covers that are detached, pages that are loose, some are exhibited with fold-outs. If the folds are very weak and broken, we have to repair those. We get all the books in working order and ready to be displayed.
Great. And Jen, can you tell us a little bit about the books that we have here to take a look at? This is a really, really fun one, and I hope people can see it.
Yeah, this
online.
book is called Concealing Coloration by Abbott Thayer. From 1910, Abbott Thayer was an American artist who's well known for his paintings, but aside from being a painter, he became rather obsessed with color and color in nature and the coloration of animals. And he presented this theory that animals' coloration was really about concealment in nature to protect them from being eaten by predators and such. And he has these beautiful depictions. Now, this is the frontispiece across from the title page, and I'm going to ask the viewers if they can tell what animal might be hiding in this scene.
Can anybody guess? Might be a lag. I don't see any guesses.
So,
I've got one. Peacock.
Yeah.
T-Rex. Oh, T-Rex, that's a good one.
Well, T-Rex is interesting because who knows what color dinosaurs were. That's a whole other topic of conversation. But there is a theory that they were covered in feathers like the peacock, which is the right answer. So who knew a peacock could actually be camouflaged? But when you see it in this setting, you can see how its amazing colors kind of blend into the background, and that's a concept called disruptive patterning, and Thayer was the first to really propose this theory and also suggest it to the military to use camouflage in military combat. Our U.S. military at first turned him down, didn't think it was a good idea, but this very book got in the hands of Europe, and Europeans started applying camouflage to planes, which is another thing in our exhibit. We have a graphic of a plane from the Air and Space Museum with a very bold, colorful camouflage on the wings, which actually ends up making it sort of disappear when it's in the sky.
So we've had a couple questions about the printing process for this. Do we know if this is lithography or?
Yeah, this is a color lithograph. So printed as many things are printed today. It's not hand colored or anything. Speaking of printing, though, we do have a very important work about the history of printing. This is a book called Colorito by a man named Leblanc. It's from 1722. It was printed in London. Now, this is an extremely rare book. Only 15 were known to ever have been printed, and only 4 were sent to the United States. Well, before we were in the United States, but America. What's so important about this book is not only does he document the primary colors mixing to secondary colors, so your yellow and blue make green. This is the first time it was ever printed in a book. But he also laid the foundation for our modern day printing process that we still use today. So your CMYK, your printers that take cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, this guy invented it in 1722.
Awesome.
So very important book.
And then you might be able to see these really delicate but very sturdy stands that these books are on. And Vanessa, can you tell us a little bit more about these stands?
These are book cradles.
Book
that
cradles,
I think
sorry.
Aptly named because they are cradling the book. They're made to fit precisely the spine and shape, holding the book and resting it very comfortably while it's on display. These, this one in particular is made of plexiglass. We use these for heavier weight books. This volume is quite heavy, so it can't be supported by what we're constructing in the Book Conservation Lab, made out of.
So you make these in our book conservation lab.
4-ply archival net.
Very neat. And then we purchased these big, heavy plastic.
Now these are custom made.
Custom made.
Yes.
Very cool.
For things of odd orientation, horizontal format books, we have custom-made cradles, usually made of plexiglass.
We had a very relevant question. How do you keep the books from getting moldy? And I'm guessing that you might be able to answer that with some information about these really sturdy cases we have over here and any of the environmental monitoring we do.
Books are put on display. When they're in storage, we have to monitor light, temperature, and relative humidity. So there are parameters in which we have to maintain a constant relative humidity to keep books from becoming moldy. We don't want it too humid.
Yeah. So, when is the exhibition opening? That's a great question. It opens the first week in February. You can tune into our website, library.si.edu, for additional information about the exhibit. Jen, could you tell us what we're looking at here? I see a number 12, but it's possible that there are people who do not.
Yeah, so this is a book that tests color blindness. Many of you may have had these tests done when you go to your eye doctor. Color blindness affects almost 5% of the population, and there are many different kinds of color blindness. Red-green is the most common. These plates were created by a man named Ishihara, who was a Japanese military doctor during World War I. And he created these tests to identify soldiers that had color blindness. In war, it could be a life or death situation if you can't tell the difference between colors. So it was a very important test for military purposes.
And so what year is that book? Do you remember?
The tests were developed in 1917.
Oh.
This edition is from the 1930s.
Okay.
So it was earlier than this book because I was amazed when I was working. This needed treatment, as a matter of fact. The cover, it had been so used, well used, the cover had become detached. And I saw the date 1936, and having done this myself recently, a medical test, I was amazed at that date.
And they're still relevant.
Yeah,
So
I know.
it's now 100 years old.
It's amazing that it's still the standard test used for color blindness.
So speaking of conservation work, could you show us some of the work that you had to do on this guy?
The front covers had detached, so we try to keep as much of the original cloth covering as possible, or whatever covering is used, leather in this case. So I basically had to peel away the top layer. These are on boards. It's cloth over bookboard. Peel away the layered cloth on the spine on both sides. And then I used toned Japanese paper and wheat starch paste. Apply it to join both the cover to the spine and then rejoin the cloth.
Wow.
So you want the repair to be as least noticeable as possible. But still, in the future, you can see that there is something there. It has been repaired. You don't want to fool a conservator in the future.
Fool a conservator in the future.
They want to know what materials are being used.
So I think that we have lurking in that pile a Newton work. Can we talk about that a little bit? Jen, you want to tell us about, is it Optics?
Right there.
Yes.
And that's
So Optics by Newton. This is a first edition from 1704.
let me get this
Thank
out
you.
of there for you.
He really studied color in a scientific manner and laid the groundwork for people to continue the study of color based on science. So before this book, basically it was Aristotle's beliefs on color that held true for most people, which was very different than Newton's science-based understandings. Aristotle talked about light being sent down from the heavens, light versus dark, and earth, wind, and fire all came in as elements that created the colors we see. Newton did his experiments where he passed sunlight through a prism and was able to determine that light was actually composed of all the colors of the rainbow. So he defined the Roy G. Biv colors of the spectrum. There is a fold-out in here that we'll be displaying. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able, is it with that marker? Great, okay. So this fold-out will be in the exhibition, and this is the very first scientifically based color wheel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And Newton did it. That's
And
neat.
Newton did it. There is a little controversy over Newton's defining of the colors. A lot of people sort of debate whether indigo is really a color, but there are some Newton scholars who believe that he really wanted there to be 7 because the number 7 had some sort of mystical and magical properties. 7 was key to the musical scales at the time.
Wow.
So he might have squeezed in indigo to have 7.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Were there any editions of this in which they were hand-colored?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Oh,
All of the editions we have, it's not. When you get into some later publications, you have people filling them in with color. So like Chevril, who's another person in the exhibition who did a lot of work on simultaneous contrast, he developed a lot of very detailed color wheels. Yeah.
So for anybody who's just joining us, we are getting a sneak peek at Color in a New Light, a new exhibit from the Smithsonian Libraries here in the National Museum of Natural History. The display cases are bare because we are going to load these bad boys in them in a little bit. And we're talking with the conservator, Jen Coleman-Brockie, and our book conservator and head of preservation services, Vanessa Haight-Smith. So if you have any questions, please let us know. You can also feel free to tweet us any questions afterwards at SI Libraries, and we'd be happy to answer them. And please visit our website at library.si.edu for more information. So Jen, would you like to share with us your favorite book from the exhibit?
My favorite is probably Colorito, which we talked about briefly, just because of how rare it is, its importance in color printing. But another favorite of mine is actually this one. This is a book called Spectrum Analysis by Roscoe. He was friends with a man named Bunsen of the Bunsen burners, which maybe you remember using in high school chemistry class. So what was so important about the Bunsen burner is that it burned metals purely in a very clean way. And once you were able to burn metal cleanly, you could look at it through a spectrometer. And when you look at it through a spectrometer, what you see are essentially spectral fingerprints where each
fingerprints.
spectral fingerprint, so each metal, each element essentially when it's burned gives off a spectral fingerprint like so. So these are the spectra of metals. When this technique was first developed, they identified many more elements to add to the periodic table. But what I find most fascinating about this is that the ability to do this allowed us to understand what the stars and the planets are composed of without having to physically travel there.
Wow, there's so many connections
So-
between the stuff and between color, you know, red, white, and blue, and green, and purple, and real hard science that
Oh yeah,
amazing.
yeah. No, that's why the topic of color is fascinating. It can really take you anywhere, and there are amazing stories that I discovered when researching this. And you know, this ended up leading to astrophysics. So I don't know a lot about astrophysics, but the fact that it was generated by studies of color essentially is pretty fascinating.
So there was a question about how do the colors how do they age? And I'm guessing that's how the colors in the book age.
Great
So Vanessa, what can you tell us about that?
Well, the beauty about books is, for the most part, when they're not being used, they're put on a shelf closed. Light is a book's greatest enemy. So for long-term exposure, we rotate the books every 4 months. This is a year-long exhibit because we don't want to expose particularly the color plates. There are dye samples, paint samples in this exhibition.
Oh yeah, we should mention that there's way more to books than books in this, which is
So, I mean,
important
it
to know.
does. It fills a spectrum. So, it's important to maintain the original color as best as possible. So, we don't want to leave this exposed to light. The light levels are very low within the cases. There's UV protective coating on the glass for ambient light. So, you do want to protect from any light source. And so, this is why they're open for such a short time.
Yeah.
And the reality of that means finding rotations, which are either flipping pages, which we're able to do in some of these books, especially things with color samples where you have many pages to choose from. But books like this, you're dealing with, you know, one image, and we had to find 4 copies of it, which we had with
We have 4
with the
copies
breadth of
of
our
it? Wow,
collection,
tell
we
us.
actually do. Some fall in the sciences, some fall in the arts. One is all the way from Panama. It was sent up from our
We
tropical
do have
research.
21 branches, folks, from New York to Panama. So wow, and we have 4 copies of this guy.
Yeah.
So okay, and we had a question, what other incredible books will we see during the year? So you've had a little bit of a selection here, but there's also there's trade literature, there's fashion. Can you tell us what else we don't see on this table?
Ostrich feathers, I think, is pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah. So in our Making Color section, we talk about the invention of synthetic dyes, and we tell the story of purple, which was really one of the first synthetic dyes discovered. And when we tell the story of synthetic dyes, we also feature a dye sample book, which is the Practical Ostrich Feather Dyer. It has lovely little
for practical
ostrich,
purposes.
For practical, that's right, for practical purposes. It has little feathers pasted into the pages that are a variety of colors, and also the recipes on how to make those colors using synthetic and natural dyes. It was a husband and wife team that created this book, and they were encouraging people to start their own little dye business in their kitchen. Ostrich feathers were often attached as accessories onto hats and dresses, and so to keep up with fashion, a lot of times people would just swap out their ostrich feather trim with the new latest colors, rather than getting a whole new dress.
So do you know off the top of your head if that book will be digitized and available in our digital library?
Eventually that book will,
Eventually,
yes.
okay. So
anything that's pre-1923 in this exhibit will eventually be online, and many will be when our website's released soon too.
Excellent. We did have a question. Do we have any Joseph Albert in the exhibit?
We
Yep,
certainly do.
We do.
So we have his interaction of color, which... Oops, we're going this way.
We
got to get out of the installations. Joseph Albers did a wonderful publication in 1962 on the interaction of color, where he has many color exercises on color phenomena. And we're featuring a plate with a red dot and a white dot, which is a really fun experiment that you can do at home as well. You stare at a red dot for 30 seconds, and then you change your gaze to the center of the white dot, and the white dot, for me, turns to like a brilliant aqua blue right before my eyes. So
Oh.
that addresses successive contrast or the after image effect. When you stare at a color and then look away, you see other colors.
So do we have any other questions before we sign off? Or Grace, did you this is Grace Constantino from the Biodiversity Heritage Library. She was our question manner, our question noter. So Grace, did you catch anything we missed?
There was only one question that I saw that we didn't answer. Somebody asked if there is such a thing as book scorpions, and whether we deal with
Scorpions? I'm not familiar with book scorpions.
Is that like a really horrible bookworm? Like
I was wondering if that's some sort of pest. I've never come across a book scorpion unless it's had another name. Occasionally there is insect damage, and we have ways of dealing with that, either by freezing or removing the oxygen from an enclosed area to get rid of them. But I've never heard of a book scorpion.
Huh. So we had one last question. Will all of the books be listed online? And we do have a digital library collection available now at library.si.edu, which has a lot of these books digitized and available for you to look through in their entirety. I don't know if there will be one complete list of every book that was featured in the exhibit. Do you, Jen?
The website will include most of what's
okay,
on
good.
display. We might not be able to include images of things that are in copyright still, but for the most part, the content on the website will cover most of what is
perfect.
on display.
Great. So we hope that if you can't get down to DC, that you take a look at the exhibit website, and even if you can, take a look at library.si.edu to see what we've digitized and to take a look at some of these books. And we've been asked, will we broadcast again? Yes, we hope so. We'd love, if you have suggestions for what we should talk about, please let us know. We have 2 other exhibits open right now that we should walk you through at some point too. So thank you so much for joining us. And again, and if you're really interested in Color Next, which I hope you are if you turn in, please check us out on Twitter. On February 4th, we are hosting a Twitter chat with color expert from Benjamin Moore, Carl Minshew, and also with Jen to answer more of your color questions. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.